But now I'll rise above you.
Swazala, you stale slices of bread, how the hell are ya? So, we got our Devstream 152 over and done with, which I would classify as the Devstream of the beginning of the year. What I mean by that is, every year DE comes out of the woodworks from their vacations and all their stuff, and they kind of get everything settled, and then they go ahead and do a Devstream, where they kind of mention what kind of has been going wrong so far, and what their plans are for the rest of the year. So I guess that's what this Devstream was. Now, quick disclaimer, if you guys are interested in hearing a watered down version of everything that was said there, I'm not the right channel to visit for that. I'm not a news channel. I have no intention of regurgitating everything that was already said. If you do want that, then I suggest you go and watch the full Devstream yourself if you want the unfiltered information, or go watch any of the other 20 YouTubers covering Devstreams. If you're tuned in to me, then you know that what I give you guys is some context and some thoughts and some honest opinions about what was said there. As a player who has been with the game for about 6 years or probably even longer, I've actually been with the game for longer, I think, in YouTube content for even longer. You guys know that I keeps it real with you guys. And I feel like there are a couple of things that need to be said about this Devstream. Now, if I don't mention everything that I have some thoughts on in this video, then expect me to make a separate video, like, for example, the idea with the mods for guns. But we'll get to that later. So let's just jump straight into it, right? One of the biggest things that was mentioned was Railjack unification as a general term. So DE has finally realized that content islands are not great, they're not amazing, and they spoke a little bit about how they want to revamp Railjack in general, to be a little bit more uniform with the rest of the game, and they do this, or they're planning to do this in two different ways. Number one, you're basically going to have actual Railjack mods, so the whole intrinsic system and Diluc, or whatever it's called, system, all of that stuff is going to be revamped to be a little bit more in line with the rest of the game. And they're also going to change the reward pool a little bit, which is both things that I've been mentioning for ages as well. That there's no real reason to play any of these content islands, because these content islands only drop things that are relevant to those islands. So if you're not interested in those all that much, there's literally no reason to go play them. Okay, so now they're going to add things like relic cracking in the Railjack missions. They're going to put some hard to get Warframes in there. Ash was mentioned. I hope that they also include things like Nidus or Harrow, you know, the ones that have really, really horrible grinds. Throw them in there as well. A couple of prime frames are going to show up in there and stuff like that. So overall, a pretty good idea. Now, the only thing that worries me a little bit about this is D is basically going to do a fairly significant change to Railjack. They're going to touch drop rates. They're going to touch the way Railjack is integrated with the rest of the game. So if I understand correctly, what they want to do is basically have you do a little bit of Railjack, but then go back to what they call the core game. The core game is you in your Warframe on the ground, slashing the crap out of things, right? That kind of stuff. So not Star Trek Space Battle, but rather on the ground, hands-on, billions. And basically Railjack missions are going to start looking more like a little bit of Railjack, and then you like actually start boarding the ships. You know, they're going to move a little bit closer to what was actually originally shown in the TennoCon stuff, which, I mean, I don't want to say that ship has sailed, but they showed that stuff 3 years ago or so. I don't see why it took this long for that to finally be implemented in the game. And also, I'll believe it when I see it, because like I said at the beginning of the video, DE has a habit of coming out of the woodworks every new year with all of these promises and all of these things and whatever, and not ever really delivering on them. And that's not me trying to be mean. That's not me being salty to them. This is just me basing what I'm saying right now off of my experience of the past several years of watching DE very, very closely. If you don't believe me, then just go back and watch every Devstream of every January and February of the past years, and you tell me if they're that different. I doubt you will find anything, but go ahead, knock yourself out. Generally, of course, the ideas are good. If they do actually deliver on them, then that would be great. But here's another thing that makes me a little bit nervous. It seems like they're going to do quite the significant change to Railjack as a whole. Why is there no test cluster? Of course, we still have time until then, but why has there not been any mention of any test clusters yet? Do they even plan to make any test clusters, or was this just going to be another one of those things where DE just puts them in the game and then they're like surprised, like, oh shit, we should have tested this first? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Generally, overall, though, of course, the ideas that they have are good. They're not horrible. I do kind of like it. They're going to get rid of some of the intrinsics and things that we as players thought were kind of useless, and maybe replace them with new things. They're going to add frames in there that are hard to get otherwise, and just unify and bring Railjack into the rest of the game a little bit more, so it all kind of comes together a little bit more. Great. We'll have to wait and see. I hope they do decide to do a test cluster well before they release it, but on the other hand, these are all ideas that they have for spring. Now, I don't know about you guys, it isn't spring yet at the time of uploading this video, but spring will be over in June or so, which gives them a good solid 3 or so months to actually do all of this stuff. I don't know, that feels a little bit tricky to me, but no, okay, sure. Railjack is also going to get new game modes and stuff like that. So I just think they definitely need to do some kind of a test cluster. I hope that they thought of that, and if not, I hope this video wakes them up to actually do it, even if it's last minute, I don't care. As long as they have it done, because this feels like something that deserves a test cluster, TBH, because it's not just like, oh, we're going to replace 2 intrinsics with ones that we think are good, and they're going to do quite a lot with Railjack, so I think it deserves a test cluster, but we'll have to wait and see. Next thing that was mentioned that everybody's probably freaking out over is the melee nerf. Okay, so number 1, let me just mention this very, very clearly again. DE's intention with the melee nerf is only about 10% nerfing melee, but 90% focused on bringing the damage of the weapons up. Now, in the same breath, DE mentioned that someone at Digital Extremes is working on pitching possible mods, which I am going to make a separate video on, but possible mods for guns to help bring the guns up to par with melee. And of course, there are going to be some melee nerfs, but they don't want to do it too crazy, and that's not the focus, but they probably will nerf it. It seems like they mainly targeted the melee speed. While DE mentioned these things, basically in the same sentence, it kind of told me that, yet again, they don't quite understand what the problem is. Naturally, it kind of sucks when melee is so overpowered that you have no reason to use anything other than melee. Yeah, that does kind of suck. And yeah, as they made a point for those players who maybe enjoy the gunplay of the game, they're kind of lost because the guns just don't equate to the insane damage that melee can do. But on one hand, that does make sense, and I get it, and I understand their sentiment, and yes, there should be some work done toward that, but on the other side, it's a PvE game versus brain-dead enemies. Like, who gives a shit if you can one-shot an enemy with a spin attack with melee and a certain setup? Like, no, like seriously, like, how does that matter? Is there any content in the game that requires some kind of proper teamwork, or is there any kind of a boss in there that it makes the game super relevant, and you just kind of trivialize it by one-shotting them or something? No, that content doesn't exist. So who cares if we're deleting the enemies, with melee? It doesn't really matter. I don't think that melee needs any kind of nerf, really, especially not to the melee speed, because one of the things that was mentioned as well, I think it was Jeff who mentioned this, is that it's kind of absurd how fast we can sometimes go with the melee, with our melee attack speed. And it was kind of mentioned that it's kind of silly because, you can't even see what's going on anymore. Again, and guys, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you feel the same way, but these are my thoughts, okay? I don't think that that's relevant either. Who cares if you can grab a Valkyrie and stack some attack speed and stuff like that, and your animation that you're doing becomes nothing more than a twitch? Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Most of the stances that we have, the so-called combos, are garbage anyway. They look stupid because the movements are pretty bad. I'm saying this as a martial artist. When I look at many of these stances, the stances very much kind of stink, right? They're not fun. They all have forced and excessive forward movement without moving forward. Hell, most of them are even so bad that while you're pressing S to move back and attacking, you're still being propelled forward naturally. And it's just silly. Who cares if that's fast? Nobody plays Warframe to see the cool weapon stances and stuff like that. Nobody plays it for that. We want to slash the shit out of stuff and have it dead. Nobody wants to watch that. If people want to see something go that slow, they'll play Dark Souls or Sekiro or whatever. If you want to see slow sword play or dagger play or whatever. I don't think that it's... I want to say that it's not fair, but I find it kind of silly that attack speed is the thing that they're looking at. Because attack speed is also damage output related. I would find it way more sensible if they would maybe, I don't know, restrict the secondary viral priming or the primary viral priming. So we all know that melee deals a lot of damage, not because melee is just overpowered, but because people slap viral procs on them, on the enemies with a secondary or a primary rifle gun first, and then they basically hit the crap out of them with their melee and everything is dead. Even if they would remove the ability to prime the enemies with a gun with viral first, even if they do that, we'd still be deleting the enemies. Here's an idea for guns. Maybe give the gun some kind of critical multiplier. Perhaps, because that's one of the reasons why melee deals so much damage. Melee doesn't only just stack statuses and stuff like that, melee also does, well, crit multipliers, which guns don't. I mean, they do crit, and those crits in and of themselves are, of course, multiplied damage, but melee has combo count as well. And I don't think that we need to remove any of that. I don't think that we need to make melee weaker, because traditionally speaking, many games do have the melee weapons being stronger than the guns. I don't know, CSGO, for example, where you knife the enemy once and they get insta one-shot. But all that's beside the point. I don't think that the approach is necessarily the clever or most clever way to go about this, because DE also mentioned mods. I doubt that any amount of mods are going to be enough to fix gunplay versus melee combat in Warframe. The imbalance is too great. Unless you have a new primed serration that deals 5,000% more damage, then sure, maybe. But aside from that, short of that, you're not going to get there, okay? So I'm thinking that if mods is the way DE wants to fix rifles and secondary pistols and stuff to kind of bring them up closer to melee, they're going to notice, holy shit, wait a minute, mods aren't enough, and they're going to have to nerf melee even further down to bring it into some kind of a compromise. And I don't think that that's really necessary. Again, yes, there is a massive imbalance between melee and gunplay, but does it really matter? I don't think so. Who cares? We will always be able to one-shot level-capped enemies. Steel Path level-capped enemies, for that matter. Level 9,999 Steel Path enemies are not hard to kill. They're silly. Their AI is dumb, which brings me back to the point of AI, which is another thing that they mentioned, talking about Warframe difficulty. Recent bosses have been more mechanical, blah, blah, blah. That's all fine and dandy and great, but the core problem with Warframe is still that the enemies are stupid. They're really, 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 really dumb. They almost act like they want to die. If you don't believe me, go and watch my How to Not Be a Shit Nova video. You'll see a nice little clip on just how brain dead the AI in Warframe is. But that aside, I don't think that we need to nerf melee at all. And if they do touch it, I don't think that attack speed, should be on the focus point, because that's completely irrelevant and nobody wants to play Warframe melee like Sekiro or Dark Souls, let's say. Nobody wants that. I think the speed is part of the fun, even if it's ridiculous speed. That's just part of the fun of Warframe, I'd say. If anything, they may want to look at not allowing Viral to be primed with a rifle or with a secondary to then be taken advantage of with your condition overloads and etc. with your melee. Maybe something like that. But attack speed? I don't know. I don't know about that one. Perhaps we could even limit the stacking of speed buffing arcanes for melee specifically, if that's such a problem. And again, I don't think that super high attack speed is a problem. It really shouldn't be looked at like that. Okay, and the final thing that they mentioned was open world expansions. I mean, well, it's about damn time. It's only been 3 years since we've been complaining about Plains of Eidolon being boring. They're talking about a little bit about expanding on the missions there. This is also probably not going to happen anytime soon, but it's high time that they do something. Watch this little clip of what Steve, I think it was, said toward the end of the Devstream.
I think we've been internally not doing well balancing the kind of releases that add new game modes. I think Orphic Sedum was a good exception to that, but I don't think that we've been doing enough to revitalize that old stuff that kind of have musty smell on some of those game modes. And so that's kind of a big kind of the marching orders of our crew is to dig a little deeper, and maybe even if things are working, if you guys are burned out on them, we got to change it.
So they do want to do something, and as he said, if us are burned out on the mission types that they have, then they need to change this. Freaking finally. Like, I can't even tell you guys for how many years veterans, content creators, partnered, non-partnered creators, players all around the globe have been complaining about exactly that. I swear to God, DE lurks on my streams and takes notes. This is stuff that I've been bitching about for years, I'm sure. And it's about time. The thing is, though, I wonder if any of this stuff is a little too late. You know what I mean? Warframe has been going on this weird roller coaster ride of content and content droughts, and people saying Warframe has plenty to do, and another group of people saying Warframe has fuck all to do. It's been a really weird ride for about 4 or 5 years now or so, and I just worry that maybe it's a little bit too late for that now. In any case, no matter what they mentioned in the Devstream, I think that we need to just wait and see, because it's not the first time that they claim we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Cough Pet reworks going to be released next month. They said last year. Still not a thing. I think that DE really needs to start delivering. They did seem to have a bit of an attitude toward less talk, more walk in this Devstream, but also that is nothing new. We're just going to have to wait and see. If DE doesn't deliver in 2021, I don't know. I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised. I've been doing this shit and watching these guys for over 6 years now, guys. Like it's all been said and done before, okay? I have absolutely no reason to hope that anything that they say is actually going to happen. And if it does, then great. Like, I'm not putting the game down. I'm not trying to discourage DE from going through with these things. Not quite the opposite, but I mean, just based off of the recent events, or not the recent events, based off of events over the past couple of years, I have no reason to have blind confidence in Digital Extremes and them actually making the game better. I hope that they do, but we'll just have to see. Now, if I haven't mentioned something that you heard about or that you have in mind about the Devstream, then I'm probably going to do that in a separate video. For now, I just wanted to get those 2 points off of my chest. Railjack, all of these severe changes, they sound pretty good, but I think they need a test cluster, which I have no information of, which makes me think that they're probably not going to do a test cluster. And when it comes to melee and gun, changes to be kind of more equal to one another. I don't think that nerfing the attack speed is super relevant. The stances are stupid anyways. They should probably look at something else when it comes to that. And if their suggested solution for the incredibly overwhelming melee damage is better mods for guns, if that's all that they've got nothing. So let's just wait and see what happens. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know if I forgot anything. Let me know if you want to know my thoughts about anything other specific, and I'll pack that in a separate video. Mainly what I have on mind right now for a separate video is the whole melee and gun situation. But yeah, that's all for now. I don't have much other thoughts about the whole thing. We'll just have to wait and see, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay healthy and safe and all that other good shit. And as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe to this shitty channel, and fuck off.